Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.
Good evening and welcome to The Local Live. I'm Mike Witch.
And I'm Jackie Grosha. It's still bitterly cold out there, so hopefully you're cozy inside watching us on TV.
And we've got a great show for you today. Later on, joining Maura Carlin and me in this week's discussion will be New York State Senator George Latimer, Rhinebeck High School Principal Barbara Ferraro, and Annie Ward, the Assistant Superintendent of the Mamaroneck Schools.
But before we get to the round table, let's sneak a peek at some of tonight's stories.
Have you heard about the new local waterfront revitalization program? Well, we'll tell you why it's important for the village of Mamaroneck.
Ever stuck in traffic at the New Rochelle Toll Plaza? State Senator George Latimer has a solution.
If you've always dreamed about being a chef but couldn't afford a professional kitchen, you'll love the Cooking and Baking Center in Mamaroneck.
And this week in sports, we have the Rhinebeck boys basketball team.
The local waterfront revitalization plan was a hot topic at the Harbor Coastal Zone Management meeting on February 25th. First written in 1984 to deal with the potential harm to the waterfront, the document has recently undergone a rewrite, which many residents felt did not address the issue as well as the original.
Current LWRP revision is a rewrite. It's not a revision.
Update it and put in what is now required by the state. Don't change it.
At one point, there was a change in geographic boundaries that the LWRP would cover. Nobody seems to be able to explain where that came from.
The deadline for commentary on the document to be submitted is Friday, February 28th, but the Coastal Zone Management Board will ask for an extension. You can find the document on the internet. What do you think about the new wording? Should the new document be changed to resemble the previous one? Send us your tweets and comments to let us know. We hope to have a roundtable on this topic in the future.
Democratic State Senator George Latimer wants a high-speed toll at the New Rochelle Toll Plaza on Route I-95, reports TheLoop.com. Latimer went on to explain that when the toll booths are filled with traffic, many cars seek to avoid the backups by using adjacent local roads, clogging the business districts in the east end of New Rochelle, as well as in the village of Larchmont.
This really, Michael, is a no-brainer. I mean, this is not deep thinking. High-speed, easy-pass tolls are in effect in the Garden State Parkway. They're in effect in the thruway system up north. When you can go through the toll booth at the normal speed and you segment it off to the side, you take that whole flow of traffic out of the traffic jam. And the New England Thruway is probably the most prominent amount of traffic on the New York State Thruway system for people that are just passing through the state, because they're starting out in New Jersey, going across the Cross Bronx, up the New England Thruway into Connecticut, on up into New England. So I understand this is a capital project. It's not easy and free to do. It's going to take a couple of years to plan it out and do it. But to me, it's a no-brain situation. So hopefully the Thruway Authority will see it as a logical thing to do. They'll schedule it and they'll get it done, and we'll have that much improvement at that location.
Do you take the I-95 in your everyday commute? How will these changes affect you? Let us know online. We want to hear from you. Next up is Mike Witch's weekly In the Media segment. He reads the news and catches all the Westchester stories you may have missed on the other local media.
The Daily Voice reports that the town of Mamaroneck is preparing for possible flooding this spring. The concern is about the saturated ground from all the snow, so the reservoir level is being lowered and catch basins are being cleared. The town is working on a hazard prevention and mitigation program. You can read the draft of that program on the town website. A public hearing on this proposed plan will be held during the town board meeting on March 19th. In a related story, the county executive issued a press release saying that he's proposing 2 flood mitigation projects, one on the Mamaroneck River and the other in Eastchester. The total cost will be almost $2 million. At the county's Saxon Woods Park, which is located in parts of Mamaroneck and Harrison, 9 acres of floodplain along 1,400 feet of the Mamaroneck River will be restored at a cost of $600,000. The severely eroded riverbank will be stabilized with rock and vegetation. Along the river, invasive vines will be replaced with hundreds of tree saplings and other vegetation to stabilize the soil and improve water absorption and filtration. In 2012, the county completed similar improvements to 9 acres along 1,600 feet of the river directly to the north. Other flood mitigation projects moving forward include the replacement of the Anita Lane Bridge in Mamaroneck to improve the flow in the river channel during severe storms. Reporter Katie Hoos writes in the Mamaroneck Review that recent proposed changes to the village's local waterfront revitalization program have some residents up in arms, claiming the village's unique character is at stake. The program acts as a comprehensive guide for expansion along the village's coastal zone, trying to promote a balance between the preservation of natural resources and smart economic development. There was a public hearing this week, and a vote is scheduled for next week. To read the full story, go to the Mamaroneck Review website. And that's some of the news this week in the media.
Dude, there is a bunch of zombies outside.
What?
There are zombies in the front lawn. It's Z-Day.
Well, what do we do?
Let's check out the news.
I'm here on Halstead Avenue, where the Mamaroneck Police Force has already begun to crack down on the zombie menace. Get out of my shot! Residents are advised to stay inside, lock their doors, and wait it out. Back to you in the studio.
Looks like we're gonna be okay.
Hello, I'm Maura Carlin, and you are watching the 11th edition of The Local Live. Our roundtable focuses on education reform and specifically the Common Core here in the Sound Shore. Adopted by New York State in 2010, it faced little opposition until last year when implementation began. The New York State Teachers Union recently withdrew its support. Both the Mamaroneck and Rhinebeck school districts have rejected federal Race to the Top funds, which is tied to Common Core reporting. And local parents, teachers, and administrators are speaking out. What is the cure for the Common Core? Where are we, and where are we going with it? EngageNY.com is the website that explains the Common Core program, and we want to engage you in the discussion. Before we begin, we have a short clip by the Council of the Great City Schools explaining more about the Common Core. Let's take a look.
Like it or not, life is full of measuring sticks. How smart we are, how fast we are, how well we can, compete. But up until now, it's been pretty hard to tell how well kids are competing in school and how well they're going to do when they get out of school. We like to think that our education system does that. But when it comes to learning what they really need to be successful after graduation, is a girl in your neighborhood being taught as much as her friend over in the next one? Is a graduating senior in, say, St. Louis as prepared to get a job as the graduate in Shanghai? Well, it turns out the answer to both of these questions is no. Because for years, states have been setting different standards for what students should know and be able to do at each grade level. That's making it too hard to know if our kids are really doing well enough overall, and if they can really compete for a job someday. What we really need are clear goals. That's where the Common Core state standards come in. They're like a total sea change in education. Consistent, strong, clear benchmarks for English language arts and math. Here's how it works. You can think of kindergarten through 12th grade like a giant staircase. Each step is a skill your child needs to learn before stepping up to the next one. But right now, too many kids aren't really confident with like 2 + 2 before they have to move on to 2 × 2. We need more focus on the skills that help them move up the stairs, or they can slip up and fall behind. And there's another problem. What if everyone's stairs were made at different heights? Well, here we go again. They are. So, a boy in Seattle who's rocking an A in English literature could be getting a C on his Chicago friend's staircase. Oops. We need to create consistent steps in education, too. So first, each standard creates a landing on the staircase, a stop along the way as your child heads toward high school graduation. Each stop is a chance for every parent and teacher to focus on the skills their students are supposed to know at that step, no matter the zip code, language, or race. And more importantly, each standard makes sure all students are learning what they need to know to get to graduation and beyond. Because something like counting to 100 leads to understanding dollars and cents, which eventually leads to understanding how to manage a budget. Secondly, the standards are consistent from school to school, and they match up against international standards too. Now we know how we're doing compared to just about everyone. So even though local communities will still design their own curriculum, with the same rules, everybody can compete on the same kind of staircase. But standards aren't learning. That's why we need teachers, parents, and students to help make that happen by working together to help kids meet these standards. The world's getting more and more competitive every day. But now, when our kids get to the top of their staircase, they can have way more options on where their life goes from there. Clear goals, confident, well-prepared students. That's the Common Core State Standards.
With me is my co-host, Mike Witch, a longtime educator and now adjunct media professor at Iona College. We have 3 guests here to speak on this subject. New York State Senator George Latimer, the highest-ranking minority member of the State Senate Education Committee, Barbara Ferrara, the principal of Rhinebeck High School, and also is responsible for curriculum there, and Annie Ward, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction in the Mamaroneck School District. Welcome, thank you for joining us, and we hope that all of you out there will join us by tweeting, emailing, and calling the numbers and addresses on the screen. Mike, I'm going to let you have the first question.
I'd like to jump in and say that video looked pretty positive. Barbara, is that your understanding of the Common Core?
The Common Core as a set of learning standards is what they are. Yes, it's a positive thing. The issue that you're going to hear us speak about tonight is the implementation of the Common Core and the other things that have been attached to it, like teacher evaluation, assessment for students, and a curriculum that hasn't been developed or have been given the time to be developed as we move toward reaching the Common Core learning standards. Higher standards are something that we all want for all of our children. We need to examine what's happening in each district, and to say that we are not achieving that is not correct. We have high standards, and New York State has high standards. We've always had a set of standards in New York State. We are always looking at them and trying to move forward and at a greater pace for our kids.
I could understand that and believe it in Mamaroneck and Rhinebeck, but is that consistent across New York State, that everybody has high standards?
Well, I'm sure there are districts in New York State where the students are not achieving. We have looked for years at graduation rates. We have looked at results on New York State Regents exams and exams given in our elementary and middle schools. So we know from those results over the years that things are not consistent across the state. However, there are many districts within New York State that are reaching those standards, reaching the aspirational goals that New York State is now talking about, and they've done it for years, so they're already there.
George, let me ask you this. Why the opposition now? This is, almost 4 years after it was the Common Core was adopted by New York State with little fanfare.
Well, because it was a concept, and now that you're starting to see it implemented into reality, we're seeing problems in the way it's being implemented. That was a wonderful video. I mean, I come out of a marketing background. It's very well done. But I don't believe it's accurate in certain ways. It generalizes a problem, and it presumes that problem is equally founded in all places. And therefore, we should have a program that changes the delivery of education in every place. You asked an important question, and that is, are we in a situation where there are districts in New York State and other parts of the country that aren't achieving? The answer is yes. But in most cases, they track demographic problems, economic issues, and other social ills. So we certainly have districts, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, where I went to public school, that are problem districts here in this county. But the change is going to be in every district. And I have objected to that because that's what we've learned in the last year in terms of the implementation, Mike. It is not find the problem, fix it. It is we have an answer for every possible situation, and I don't believe that's correct.
Well, I want to ask you another political question before we get into nuts and bolts. Is this an example of New York City against the rest of the state?
Well, in some ways it is, but it really, the foundation of Common Core is national, and I think it comes out of an educational discipline, an ideological approach to education. I'm not an educator by profession. I don't have a doctorate in education, in which they generalize about what the problem with American education is. Where do you see the problems of American education to the greatest degree? In the major cities, in the urban environments. When they show you New York and Seattle, they don't show you Evanston, Illinois, and they don't show you Issaquah, Washington, which is communities outside of those major cities where, like suburban New York, we have certain successes. That's not to say let's have a divided scenario. Let's bring the areas where they're low, bring it up. And Common Core will have, in terms of standards, some advantage to that. But when you implement it and you take a community like Mamaroneck or Rye Neck districts, which are producing by any objective standards high graduation rates, students going on to 2- and 4-year institutions, students who achieve highly in those institutions come out, get advanced degrees, and we see them every day as successes. They graduated Mamaroneck High 1992, they graduated Rye Neck 1989. Where did the system fail in these communities? So fix it where it's failing. Don't apply a one-size-fits-all.
Annie, do you think that applying the Common Core standards as New York has adopted them would lower the educational standard here?
No, I think that the standards themselves, echoing what Barbara said, there is a lot of value in the standards themselves. I mean, when they first were adopted, we, like districts across the state, looked closely at them and found many opportunities in both the English language arts standards and the math standards to do the good work of fostering problem solving, creativity, wonder, curiosity. So we don't really take issue in Mamaroneck with the standards themselves. We do, as George said, take great issue with the rapid pace of implementation, particularly the alignment of the 3 through 8 tests, which has already happened. Our 3rd through 8th graders have already had Common Core aligned tests last spring and will face them again, and now the regents are starting this year with the algebra. So I think the rapid alignment of the tests, and another thing George alluded to, the linkage, or Barbara alluded to, the teacher evaluation, has just caused incredibly unnecessary and unproductive anxiety and stress among teachers, among students.
Well, we actually have an email somewhat relating to that. Somebody is referring to Paul Tuff's book, and this is Amy Liebsman. The book, How Children Succeed.
Yes.
Defining character as resiliency, optimism, grit, and so on. And wanting to know if the Common Core facilitates that kind of building of character. Is there room in the curriculum to teach character when teachers are busy teaching core curriculum, teaching to the test and testing? And have there been any long-term test control studies demonstrating that kids in the core curriculum do better in life? This Amy worries that kids who once loved school and thought they were good at a particular subject now think they're bad at it because they got a 2 instead of a 3 or a 4. Who wants to take that?
Well, we're here. There's so much in there, so
I'll
start and then please chime in. Maybe just starting with that final point about the 2 and what a 2 has been historically, a 2 referring to 2 out of 4 on the 4-point score. One of the recent modifications that's come out from the Board of Regents was a statement that 2 should now, for the time being, not be seen as failing, but rather should be seen as on the road towards eventual progress towards mastery. Yes. But you want to say, well, if that's the stance, then why didn't we just wait before imposing, before assessing kids on these new standards? I mean, one question Amy asks in there is about the research behind, or where are the sites where these standards have been successfully translated into curriculum? And I have yet. Yeah, the answer is
there aren't any.
There aren't any.
Yeah,
it's too new.
Yeah, let me just jump in on this to reinforce this. The people who are watching this in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, whatever other field of endeavor they are, a lot of successful people in these communities, they have in their professional life had opportunities to change corporations, change practices in the way things happen in the world they live in. There is a certain discipline when you're going to affect, as that video showed, sea change. You need buy-in from the stakeholders. You need parents,
Yes.
teachers, administrators, school board people to understand, agree, and be part of how this is implemented. You cannot top-down implement it and say, we have the vision that all must look at and honor and force it through the institution. If you had failure universally across the board, you might have a case. But you have success in so many different places that you should be able to look at this and say, look, we do want certain standards. We want you to adjust, for example, the reading from less fiction, more nonfiction. We think that will help them be more productive at some point in time in college and in business. Fair enough. But you let successful people who have proven that they can teach and they can administer, you let them come up with a game plan by how they're going to administer it, and you hold them accountable. But you let them be part of the implementation. Not, here's the implementation, it's in a box, it's packaged, and we're going to give it to you and you have to do it this way. I think that's a terrible mistake New York is making.
Is this an unusual level of state detail, providing detail in education? Or is it normally like this?
Well, we can both address that, but I think the answer to your question is yes. It's a lot of participating in the detail. We need to honor the educators, as George said, who work here with the children. If you take the Common Core as a set of learning standards, it's not a curriculum, but you give it to the teachers and you say to them, now here are the standards, let's try to implement, know your population, what works for them, what do you need to do. Depending on the children you're working with and the population you have and what the children are bringing to the plate, there's a different way of approaching it. Yes, we are objecting to the way it's being implemented, and it is top-down right now. And as George said, the stakeholders haven't been involved in the dialogue, and that's really the missing link when you want to affect change and make change happen.
And we actually have a couple of tweets from Nicholas Tampio on that very matter. He says, most parents didn't know about Common Core before implementation. We're seeing the bad results. Listen to us, fight back, and goes on to say, and maybe one of you could tell me what CCSS Common Core
State
standards. Inappropriate for early grades, engaged New York modules or scripts, expensive over-test cuts fiction, cold reading. So he's really agreeing with you, except disagreeing with some of the standards, actually.
The standards are very broad. The modules are not the standards. The modules are learning units which you can adopt or reject. That's when I talk about taking the standards and having the teachers look at the standards. I don't think they would object. If you look deeply at the standards, no one's going to object to the standards. But they're standards that we've already implemented and have been in our district.
Well,
it's pushing creativity
example,
and inquiry. It's pushing all of that. We've done that. It's pushing.
It's also, I mean, there's if we just stick with that point about the phrase that we're often hearing are the shifts, the instructional shifts that the standards are causing in both English language arts and math. So one shift we've just discussed, the shift to promote more nonfiction, both reading and writing. But there are some misassumptions, I think, that get played out when there isn't adequate time to really unpack the standards and have the dialogue that Barbara's talking about. So it's not to say that we're throwing fiction out with, the fiction baby out with the bathwater. The idea is to promote more reading across content areas, which I think we'd all agree is a good thing.
And necessary, and the teachers would also agree.
Exactly.
That's
George wants to jump in.
If this was the complete debate on Common Core, we might not have as much opposition to it. But what Common Core does in addition to that, it establishes, tied into the annual performance review program, which was implemented by New York State and enforced with a stick. We will withhold state aid to education if you don't have one of these plans in place. That's unprecedented. What we've done is we've now held up mandatory testing, grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Somebody says their kid comes home crying. Yes, because 4th graders and 5th graders aren't accustomed to sitting and taking standardized tests over such a length of time. And I might add this, I'm not a teacher, but I do know that my daughter was a late bloomer in her educational capacities, freshman, sophomore year in high school. She was in tears under normal circumstances trying to grasp and kept caught up with this. But what turned her on was experiential education. When she did things that involved her working on a project with another kid, then she started to like school, and ultimately she became a good enough student to go on and get a master's degree. If you teach towards standardized testing and you raise up the art of taking the test higher than getting turned on to education, you're going to lose kids along the way. And that could be a negative result from what we have today. And that's what I'm concerned about with the mandatory testing.
So, but it's not that the kids are stressing out over a test. They're stressing out over the teacher's tendency to teach to the test. Yes?
The teachers are being judged based on that.
That's
Yes,
really
okay.
the issue. The teachers are stressed because
Right.
they're being judged. We've tied the teacher evaluation to these assessments, which are tied to the Common Core.
But that's only like
and that's-
20% of the evaluation, isn't it? The assessments?
It's 20% for state assessments and 20% for local assessments, so 40% of the evaluation is tied to assessments.
And what's the effect of on the students not doing well? Are they tracked? Does it affect placement? Does it go to colleges? You know, are they feeling that pressure, or
they're feeling pressure that's really well beyond at least the reality in Mamaroneck. But I think just to emphasize that we had in the same year kids taking new tests which were shrouded in mystery on new standards where we've had teachers teaching at a fairly, use whatever adjective you want, but frantic pace might come to mind at the very moment that then those test data are being used for the first time in the evaluation. So you couldn't have engineered more of a pressure cooker environment. And that's really what we've been in last year and this year.
I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but we do have an email from Suzanne Anderson saying, I think like many parents, I'm befuddled and frustrated by what's happening in our elementary schools. She has first and fourth graders who've always loved going to school, but this year she's getting from them resentment, tears, and angst, and hearing I hate school every morning trying to get them out of the door. The homework they bring to me has insufficient or unclear directions, and they want to know what to do. She wants to know what they can do to right the train before it goes any further off track.
Well, first, I mean, we always encourage any and all parents to have direct communication with classroom teachers about what they're seeing at home. I mean, that always has been and always will be, I think, the most effective way of an individual parent contributing to the success, the academic success, but also the social and emotional well-being of his or her kid, is to communicate concerns like that directly to teachers, because we need to hear these things. As much as, homework remains a classroom-based decision. And so many of these, I speak with parents all the time in Mamaroneck and find myself recommending first and foremost, have you spoken to the teacher? Have you let that teacher know what you're seeing at home? But it's such a pervasive, we have messages like that
all the time,
constantly.
Yes. Hasn't there been a general wish for some standardization within the community anyway? I mean, I've sat in meetings where I've heard parents complain, why is Johnny's first grade teacher not learning what Susie's first grade teacher's teaching, or things like that? And is it just a general movement that way?
Right. There's a difference between curriculum consistency, though, brought about by teams of professionals working over time to analyze standards, to research the best of whatever published curriculum is available, but often in Mamaroneck, and I'm sure in Rhinebeck as well, developing curriculum materials collaboratively. So reaching a degree of curriculum consistency is desirable. I think the point you're going to continue to hear from us is the impact then of everything converging on in these standardized tests and this false endgame that George described.
Well, if, as you believe, that Rhinebeck and Mamaroneck school districts have, in a sense, higher standards or very high standards in education, why wouldn't the students in those districts just do well on these standardized tests if their learning is already above and beyond what's expected?
The change is in the way these assessments were presented. The concepts are the same. The way that they presented has been different.
I guess I'm trying to understand, is it that you have to do a division problem by long division as opposed to short, I don't understand where the difference is, not being an educator myself.
Sure. Well, just on the math front alone, and just speaking at the elementary level, the mathematical concepts, if we look at the prior New York State standards, if we're just comparing concept to concept, there has been a shifting. Many items that would have been part of a third grade curriculum are now part of a second grade curriculum. So that's one issue. But also, as Barbara is saying, the complexity and sophistication. The math problems are very language-laden. A lot of sort of multi-step problems, which we support. I mean, we do, I assume we would all agree that we want kids to have a variety of strategies and to attack complex problems and reason through them. But I keep emphasizing the rapidity that, I mean, I assume in Mamaroneck, we were very much on board right away. We're fortunate to have department chairs at the secondary level. We're fortunate to have instructional coaches in literacy and math at the elementary and literacy coach at the middle school level. So we were relatively well-resourced when we compare ourselves to the rest of New York State. But even then, just digesting the voluminous materials within the standards themselves, comparing these new expectations to our existing curriculum, and then beginning that alignment process, we didn't, you know, we had a sense of urgency about it.
Well, of course there was a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And when you think about last spring and the exams that the elementary and middle school students went through, there were no models out there. So teachers were teaching, and they were teaching with high standards, as we all said before. And then the way the assessment, the way the question was worded, the kind of information, we talked about multi-step math problems and things that we do support for kids, but things came down very quickly and changed. And as Annie said here, the concepts were shifted. So things that were in third grade went to second grade. Things from second grade may have gone to third grade. Looking for the maps, they were not there. So then we're measuring kids, we're developing these exams, we're sending them out in April, we're not getting any models, and then we're saying, okay, we're going to assess kids and we're going to assess teachers based upon an unknown.
We have an email which actually goes to this, partially to the teaching to the test, that people use the phrase teaching to the test as though, this is from, I'm sorry, Philippa Wharton, that teaching to the test, they refer to it as though it's terrible, but if the test is good, a good teacher can teach students valuable skills and concepts in preparation for it. Her daughter had an excellent fourth grade teacher who prepared her for her class and for the then controversial high stakes fourth grade tests. The teacher did a terrific job teaching the students how to read carefully and critically and how to write a coherent paragraph. So, and then she goes on to ask, how would you evaluate the Common Core curriculum goals and tests? Do these new tests encourage teachers to teach important skills and concepts? And if so, what is the matter with teaching to the test?
Let me comment without being a teacher. The problem is when you raise the test itself up to be the definitive evaluation of whether I'm capable or not. Ask me the capital of Bulgaria. I don't think I know it. Does that mean I can't function intellectually and properly? The test will show you that I got the answer wrong. I picked the wrong city. Does that mean I didn't learn the concepts or grasp what I was being taught in geography? So here's my concern, that a good teacher will not just lecture and give you information that you have to retain and then spit back at test time. A good teacher will help you grow by doing actions and activities which may themselves not be part of the test, but will help you as an individual grow and learn how to grasp these things. When you put this kind of rigidity in testing, you put the teacher's time preciously onto having to make sure she or he hits every single module in every single element of that module. Now, I'm talking outside of my area of expertise, but that's what I think has your child come home and say, oh my God, I'm being drilled through it, like a very quick pacing of what I have to accomplish.
Which is very interesting, because from what I read about the Common Core, it was leading away from this memorization and rote learning to more thinking and analyzing.
I'd echo what George is saying, that it's the prominence of the tests themselves. So, you know, we want, if I now use some English language arts examples, we want our students reading and writing rich, whole, continuous texts. We want them, you know, reading literature and nonfiction. We want them discussing, analyzing, all these kind of meaty, meaningful, authentic activities. And that the prominence of the tests has caused, even in Mamaroneck, I think, excessive and early focus on test preparation. So there are certain ways that we know questions are posed. But if I'm thinking about a day, and you know, if we had an hour to spend in an English language arts class would we rather see that time spent, you know, analyzing a poem and making meaning together, or would we rather see a teacher showing different multiple choice test items and explaining a test-taking strategy? You know, and I think it's just, we accept the reality of standardized testing. We've long had those tests in New York State, but it's not only the volume and the extent of these tests, but it's also now just the prominence of these tests in our landscape based on many of the things that we've talked about.
And the use on teachers. But
yes.
That's a big
recently, I believe that the Board of Regents backed down a little in terms of the implementation. Am I correct? They put off certain things for about 5 years?
We haven't touched on the data collection element of this.
Right,
where the implementation in New York State has 400 data points for each student that has to be collected and ultimately stored in the cloud. Now, you know, I'm 60 years old. I'm not exactly sure I can explain to you what the cloud is.
But it's, you know, it's there.
Right, but it's up there. It's up there. But anyway,
which is actually a field, by the way.
Right, I understand that. I do understand actually what that means. But the bottom line being that this kind of data collection is posited, is that this is going to help teachers with access to this information teach better. But it opens up doors of great concern by parents, how much information is being collected, not just how you did on tests, but a behavioral situation in 3rd grade if you pull the girl's hair, and now you're going to have to answer to that in 12th grade on your record. That's a concern. That's been delayed for a year for implementation. We knew that we weren't ready to implement that. And the Board of Regents did a 2-month delay and now a 2-year delay. And you know, they're a long way from being there where they have to be. And there are other elements of it too. I know time is precious here, so I won't go on and on.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, I've heard examples from the elementary school. Is it the same in the high school? Are students also as vexed in the high school as they are in the elementary, and teachers?
Let's start with the teachers. The answer is yes, because teachers know that the students' achievement, as measured by assessments, are going to affect their own rating, and the answer is yes there. For the high school students, it's just coming up right now. The first Common Core exam will be administered in this June, both in ELA and math. And it's concerning. It's concerning to the kids, but you know, I believe, and all of our teachers are creative and will take this, and as Annie said, we'll look at it and see what's rich and what's good in it, and then take it and make it their own and implement it in a way that they continue the exciting classes that they have for the kids in the classroom. But there's still this veil there. When you attach that teacher evaluation to it, it paralyzes some people.
What is the role of a teacher evaluation for a teacher who has tenure, though? Does it have to do with compensation? Is it?
Well, I assume if they underperform based on these standards, it could cost them their job, even though they have tenured protection. Yes. Now the concern is, is pretty less in these districts, because the perception is that in Mamaroneck, Rhinebeck, Rye, Blind Brook, Bedford, you're not going to see the kind of failure that you might have in another district. But if a teacher is being judged based on how their students do, then why would a teacher go to Mount Vernon? Why would a teacher go to Yonkers, where they're going to have children in the classroom who walk in the classroom less prepared to do well? And by the way, none of this that we've talked about involves additional resources. We've got a whole bunch of, you got to test on computers. Where's the money for the computers?
Right,
our taxpayers are paying enough. Where's it coming from? And none of that's been identified in all of this. Well, there's a real concern about that.
And there's, I guess when I was thinking about it, I assume that there's a problem for, if there's a child who has special needs, doesn't perform well on tests, can't handle word questions for math, the teachers just don't want them in their classes. And
right, and I mean, it's
or in the schools.
Maura, you and I talked about that I know as a member of our district's annual professional performance review, or APPR committee, that was a real concern that we had. We actually, before we designed and negotiated our response to the new APPR regs, we agreed on a set of guiding principles that was our way of putting our own professional stake in the ground. And one of those, one of those principles was that we wanted to minimize the adverse impact on students through unnecessary testing. Number two was that we wanted to continue to promote professional collaboration and minimize potential divisiveness or competition among colleagues.
Yes. And you want them to share materials, not say, I want my kids to do better.
Precisely.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap up. I know that we could keep talking, and we may have to do this again as things develop.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again, yes.
A huge thanks to our guests this evening, Senator Latimer, Barbara Ferraro, the principal of Rhinebeck High School, and Annie Ward, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. You can watch repeats of this broadcast on LMC TV and on demand on LMC TV's website. And as always, please tune in next Thursday for a new live interactive discussion on The Local Live.
Hi.
I love your outfit.
I love your outfit.
Thank you.
We're on The Local Live here at the Westchester Tattoo Convention. And you are?
I'm Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. This is Jerry here reporting live from The Local Live.
Cooking is a hobby enjoyed by many, but it's harder to produce something delicious from a kitchen that doesn't measure up. Luckily, there's a professional kitchen where even you can become a chef. Rebecca Berman has the story.
If cooking or baking is your game, then you've come to the right spot. For those chefs out there looking to rent professional kitchen space, look no further. The Cook and Bake Center has come to your rescue. Janine Goldentire is the owner of the Cook and Bake Center.
Well, I started because I was looking myself for a place to rent so I can start my own business, and I could not find one. So then I decided that was the business I want to build.
As you can see, Janine has a fully equipped professional kitchen for cooking.
I work a lot with caterers, and we do a lot of production for farmers markets. We do artisanal canning. We have here bakers, hot sauces, tomato sauces, soups, Indian food, all kind of things.
Janine, and today I see that you have some clients, and what is it that they make?
They are making tomato sauce. They're doing canning.
Can we meet them?
Sure, absolutely.
Our company does tomato sauces. We have 3 flavors. We're doing 2 of those flavors here today. And we started our business about 2 years ago. And as I was looking to start a small food company, I realized that for me to create a kitchen myself and to get all the equipment I need would be extremely expensive and difficult to navigate even just the logistics of it. So I found Cook and Bake Center about 2 years ago, and Janine has been extremely helpful in helping us navigate starting the business. From the beginning, she was hands-on in helping us figure out how to get our approvals through the FDA. She went right down to helping us literally fill our jars and the most efficient and effective way to do that, and she's been with me every step of the way. Everything I need, I can turn to her for help, and she's there for me always and with a smile, and we have a lot of fun working here.
We are open 24/7, and we are a certified kitchen for rent by the Health Department and the Department of Agriculture of New York.
Thank you. And I noticed you have some croissants over there. Is there any way I could taste one?
Yes, sure. I made it for you.
Oh, thank you. So if you've ever had a dream to create your own food business in an entrepreneurial environment, then the Cook and Bake Center is your go-to place. This is Rebecca Berman from The Local Live.
Hey guys, you're watching The Local Live. Stay tuned.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This week in sports, the Rhinebeck boys basketball team made its first trip to the Westchester County Center since 2006. They were trailing by 5 late in the game when senior guard Chris Cascione made the LMC Varsity Sports Play of the Week.
Cascione all alone in the corner, drains it! Timeout, Rhinebeck. Back to a 2-point deficit for the Panthers.
Despite losing that game, the Rhinebeck boys squad finished 15-5 in one of their most successful seasons in recent program history. Make sure you tune in next week when we show you the top 3 plays from the winter sports season.
The Local Live couldn't run without the efforts from our volunteers. They come in all shapes and sizes, but each bit counts to make up our team, and we would love to thank all of them for their dedication. We also wanted to specially thank one of our hardest working volunteers, Brian Kerr. Thanks for all you've done for us, Brian, and we hope that you get well soon.
The Local Live. Good with you as a driver.
Hey, Louis, is this going up on Instagram?
Kayla, do you have another Twitter account on here?
Guys, for each call-in, for the parts that they want that you guys want call-ins and tweets and stuff, you're gonna say, please tweet us at, like,
Yes,
there's gonna be
yes,
cues
there's
for them
gonna
to
be
do it,
cues.
right? Yes,
No,
there'll be cues.
they're not being cued.
No. At the time that they want it?
They can call in whenever they feel like.
Well, that's all the news we have for you tonight.
Thanks for watching. The Local Live is here for you, not only to broadcast local news, but to help you get involved.
That's right, Jackie. If you or someone you know would like to send us a story or be involved in our production team, send us a tweet or an email. You can also visit us online at lmctv.org/thelocallive.
Goodbye and good night.
And remember, Mamaroneck, be friendly, and Larchmont, stay classy.
Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.